Okay, so I have to show you something that it completely changed how I look at the code I write every single day. And no, it's not some new flashy framework. It's this quiet, kind of academic paper from 1975 that, as it turns out, holds the secret DNA for so much of modern programming. Let's dive in. So there I was, falling down a rabbit hole of old computer science archives, and I stumbled on this, a memo from the MIT AI lab, dated 1975. At first, I figured, okay, cool historical document. But as I started reading, I just kept having these aha moments, one after another, recognizing ideas that are the absolute foundation of features I use constantly in languages like JavaScript and Python. So this thing, it's called AI Memo 349, and it introduces a language called Scheme. Now, the authors, Gerald J. Sussman and Guy Steele Jr., they describe it as an interpreter for an extended Lambda calculus, which I know sounds super academic, right? But all that really means is that it's a language built entirely around one core concept, functions. It was a descendant Lisp, but it was packing some seriously radical new ideas. Okay, let's unpack that for a sec, because that is a mouthful. What these guys were really trying to figure out was how you could build super flexible ways to control a program's flow. We're talking loops, error handling, the whole shebang, using just a really simple, elegant function-based language. It was this grand experiment in just how powerful a minimal language could be. And to really get what they were doing, you have to start right at the heart of Scheme. The first huge aha moment in the paper all comes down to this one simple, powerful idea they borrowed from mathematics: the Lambda calculus. So what is the big deal with Lambda? Well, in Scheme, Lambda is just the keyword you use to create a function. But here's the twist. Unlike in a lot of languages back then, these functions weren't just these static, named things bolted onto the side of the language. Nope, they were treated just like any other piece of data. And that, my friends, unlocked some incredible new ways to write code. And this brings us to this absolutely crucial concept: first-class functions. It's a simple idea, really. It just means a function is a value. Just like the number 5 or the string hello, you can pass a function into another function. You can have a function create and return a brand new function. Back then, this was revolutionary. It's the very thing that makes so much of our modern code so flexible and expressive. And once you have first-class functions, you unlock this other superpower, the closure. Okay, so a closure is basically a function that has a memory. It remembers all the variables that were hanging around in the place where it was born. So even if you run that function somewhere totally different in your code, it still has access to its original environment. This is the secret sauce behind, well, pretty much all of modern JavaScript. If you've ever used a callback that reaches for a variable outside of it, congratulations, you've used a closure. All right, so functions as data, check. But Sussman and Steele, they were just getting started. They wanted to see if they could push this idea to its absolute limit, to see if they could create any kind of program control flow using just their simple function-based system. And this is where things get, well, a little hairy. And I absolutely love this. This is a direct quote from the paper. They themselves admit that the stuff they're about to show off is apparently hairy. It's just such an honest human moment in a super technical document. So let's untangle this hairy idea. The key to these hairy structures was this one little operator they called catch. They call it an escape operator because it lets you do something kind of wild. It lets you grab a hold of the program's continuation. So what in the world is a continuation? The best way to think about a continuation is like a save game state for your code. Seriously, it's a snapshot of all the work that's left to do at any given moment. So you can grab it, pause the program, do something else, and then, whenever you want, you can just resume right where you left off. It's mind-bending stuff, and it's basically the granddaddy of modern features like async await and generators. Now, all this theory is awesome, but for me, where the paper really clicked was seeing it in action. And one of the most brilliant examples they give is a completely new take on a problem every programmer learns: calculating a factorial. So here we have two ways to write a factorial function, pulled right from the pages of the paper. The one on the left, that's the classic recursive style you probably learned in school. The one on the right, though? I mean, it looks recursive, right? It calls itself. But here's the kicker. The authors claim it actually behaves like a loop, like an iteration. This is a huge deal. Let's trace them both to see what's going on. Okay, first, let's trace this standard recursive version for, say, fact 3. Watch how the expression just keeps getting bigger. To solve fact 3, it has to remember it needs to multiply by 3,
then solve fact 2. Then it has to remember to multiply by 2 and solve fact 1. The computer has to stack up all this unfinished business before it can finally start calculating. For a big number, that stack can get too big and poof, stack overflow.
Now, look at the second version. See the difference? The expression never grows. The entire state of the calculation, the current number and the running total, is just passed along as arguments to the next call. There's no pending work to remember. The computer doesn't have to build up a big stack. It can just jump to the next step. It's behaving exactly like a for loop. So here's the punchline. The paper proves that a function that looks recursive can actually produce an iterative process. The classic style creates expressions of unbounded size, but the clever version produces a cycle of equivalent expressions. This is the core insight behind what we now call tail call optimization, a feature that lets you write recursive functions that can run forever without crashing. It's what made functional programming truly practical.
So you add all this up. First-class functions, closures, these mind-bending control structures, tail call optimization, these weren't just clever academic tricks. These ideas broke out of the lab and completely changed the game for how programming languages are designed.
But the authors were also super realistic. They were totally upfront about the implementation issues. And the number one problem was just raw efficiency. On the computers of 1975, this stuff was slow. Managing closures and their memory was really tough. They knew they had these incredibly powerful ideas, but making them fast enough for the real world, well, that was going to be the next generation's challenge. And yet, despite all those hurdles, these concepts were just too powerful to be ignored. They didn't just stay tucked away in Lisp dialects. They spread. They evolved. And now, they're at the very core of the languages that power our entire world.
So, if you're going to take away 3 big things from this incredible paper, here they are. 1. Lexical scope and closures. These are now totally standard in JavaScript, Python, Rust, you name it. 2. First-class functions. This idea is the engine that drives the entire functional programming paradigm we see everywhere today. And 3. A minimalist philosophy. The idea of building a hugely powerful language from just a few simple, core concepts has inspired language designers for decades. Reading this paper felt like getting a pair of X-ray glasses for my own code. It makes you stop and wonder, what other foundational ideas, born in papers just like this one, are hiding in plain sight in the tools we all use every single day? And that's our deep dive into this amazing piece of programming history. As always, this is just a starting point. I really hope you look up AI Memo 349 for yourself and take this exploration even further. I'm genuinely excited to see what you discover. Let me know in the comments what other topics you'd like to see covered, leave a rating, and hey, subscribe if you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.